Welcome everyone to our October 21st, 2025 City Council Work Session meeting. Our meetings are public and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching the Council's agenda page, Zoom, or YouTube. We hope you'll continue to join us in whatever manner you feel most comfortable. This is a work session meeting during which there's no public comment, but please join us tonight at our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share comments. Of course, you can also provide your feedback at any time via mail or email to council.comments@slc.gov or via our 24-hour phone line, 801-535-7654. Comments we receive on agenda topics are shared with the full council and posted to our website, slccouncil.com. The first item on our agenda is a resolution on station area plan exemptions. So for this, we have Kate Werrett from the City Council office and Nick Norris, Planning Director.
So I will be very brief. By December 31st of this year, you either need to prepare stationary plans or adopt a resolution describing exceptions for why you can't prepare stationary plans for all of the fixed rail transit stations within the city. And Nick is going to talk to you about the 6 stations that have exceptions that are allowed by state code. I'll turn it over.
Great, thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please? So this request is, well, just to recap, under state code, cities that have fixed rail transit or bus rapid transit are required to do a stationary plan for every station that is either within the city or within a half-mile radius of a station that may be outside the city. And so there's 4 objectives. I'm not going to read all those, but basically this is what the plan is intended to address. Next slide. So we have either we're fortunate, I guess, to have 34 total stations in Salt Lake City, but that means we have 34 station area plans that we are supposed to do. So this chart just shows all of those, and this is our internal tentative schedule. The good news is we have already certified 14 station areas, so that includes the ballpark and every station that's from 900 South to North Temple Viaduct. So we have met our state. So the state law says you have to do 4 by the end of this year. We're well past that. And then after that, you have to do basically 2 every year. So we're good for several years. But this schedule accounts for all the other ones. What we're here to discuss today are some stations that we don't think that a station area plan makes any sense due to the practicalities of doing that, which the state law has a process for us to submit that to WFRC, Wasatch Front Regional Council. Next slide. So these are the list of things in state code that you can seek an exception for. You don't have to meet all of them. You can meet just one of these if you want, and we're going to go through these 6 stations right now. Next slide. So the 6 stations, 4 of them are on the campus of the University of Utah. 1 is the airport station. Obviously, we can't do a station area plan at the airport. So the ones at the university, most of the land, in fact, some of those stations, all of the land is not subject to our plans or our zoning anyway. So there's also not a lot of reason to do one. And then the last one is a station that's in West Valley City, on the south side of the 201 freeway. It's called the River Trail. We'll get into some more of the details of that. Next slide. So here's a map of the airport station. You can see the entire half-mile area is airport. Pretty obvious. Next slide. This is the River Trail station. The area, the top left image, the area in blue is the portion of this station area that is within Salt Lake City. It's only 6% of the total land that's within the station area. And then, so the right-hand picture, you might be able to see that radius on there. It's kind of hard to see. It's a red line. But one of the reasons why we're seeking an exception to this, one, is the limited number of land that's in the city. But also, the shortest walking path is along the Jordan River Trail. It's 0.4 of a mile from the station to the 2100 South. However, that picture at the bottom left, there's no sidewalk that takes you from that shortest walking point to the station. The station is in the very back of that picture. You might see a little circle around it. It's actually, if you were to walk further on the trail to get to the station and safely on sidewalks, it's about 0.6 of a mile further. So there's just really no benefit from that station that Salt Lake City is going to experience. Next slide. This is probably the station where there's the most land in the city, but more than half of this land is not plans or zoning. It's either federal, state, or institutional lands that are unlikely to change. We also, a good chunk of it is within the University Historic District, which is a local and national district. And there's even more that's in a national district that's adjacent to it. There's still nearly 3,000 dwellings in this area. It's all zoned, none of it is zoned for single family only. In fact, the most dense block in this area is a density of 190 dwelling units per acre. So our contention is that this actually already meets all the objectives of the station area plan from a land use perspective, but because of the limited ability to address the other objectives in state code, we can't do that because how much of the land is not subject to our plans or our standards. Next slide. So the next one is South Campus Station. All but about 3 acres of land in this area is state or federal land. The only piece of private property that's in here is student housing or religious institutional use. Sorry, you can ignore those bullet points. Those should have been deleted, but they aren't applicable here. Next slide. Similarly, the Fort Douglas Station, none of this land is subject to our local zoning and plans. Next slide. And then finally, the U of U Medical Center, the only land here, there's about 40 acres of private land that's in the Federal Heights neighborhood to the north of this station. There are a total of 5 homes that are within the half-mile walking distance of this station. So even though there's a big chunk of that 40 acres, just with how the roads and the connectivity are in that portion of Federal Heights with the curvilinear streets, you actually have to walk pretty far to be able to get to this station. And there's 0 undeveloped land that's private. Next slide. So state code does require, when we ask for an exemption from the station area plan requirement, state code does require the city council to adopt a resolution identifying the reasons why. That's included in your packet. If the council does choose to do that, we'll forward that and the report that's attached to your transmittal to WFRC for consideration, and we'll go from there. That's it.
Any questions on any of those? Councilmember Dugan.
I mean, it seems like it's, to me, sitting here, it's pretty obvious that these should be accepted from the stationary plans. How does the state take those exceptions? Do they easily sign off on them, going, yep, you showed us pictures, you showed us, a chart?
Yeah, so far of all the, I don't know how many requests for exceptions or exemptions that WFRC has considered. I think they've all been granted when they've had them. The only one that I think might give some people pause is that stadium station, just because there is a bunch of city land. Worst case scenario, if they don't accept that, then we would address it when we update the central community plan, which is on our tentative schedule to start the second half of next year.
And this goes to WFRC. They're the body that approves the exception, and that goes to the state at that point?
No,
they're
WFRC is the last stop.
they're the last stop.
Yep.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Move on to agenda item number 2, which is an ordinance for the Economic Development Loan Fund for Rich's Grub Houses LLC. At the table for this, we have Austin Kimmel, Council Policy Analyst, Colin Gibbs, Business Development Manager, and Minerva Jimenez Garcia, Project Manager. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you, council members. This is an Economic Development Loan Fund, or EDLF loan, to Rich's Burgers and Grub, an existing burger and sandwich restaurant downtown. The Loan Fund Committee recommends the council approve a $40,000 loan at a 10.5% interest rate over 7 years. The loan would help create 2 to 4 new jobs and retain 8 existing ones. It would also help pay for machinery and equipment and leasehold improvements. This item does not require a public hearing, and a vote is scheduled for tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Economic Development.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, council members. Great to be with you today. As Austin mentioned, we have a loan for Rich's Burgers for $40,000 for some equipment and leasehold improvements. If you're familiar with Rich's, they're located on 300 South and have been there for quite some time. And we're excited to help Rich's improve some of the existing equipment on site. Minerva and myself are here to answer any questions. Minerva, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No, other than that, Rich has been in business for nearly 18 years, so it's considered a legacy business. The improvements would go specifically for a hood replacement and new flooring.
And we're happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any. Looks like we're all good. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 3. This is an ordinance for Wildlife Urban Interface Fire Code Text Amendment. So for this, we have Michael Sanders, Council Policy Analyst, Nick Norris, Planning Director, Michael Fox, Assistant Fire Chief, and Tony Allred, Battalion Chief. Thanks for being here, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Council. So during the 2025 legislative session, the state legislature passed House Bill 48. As a part of this bill, municipalities are required to adopt and enforce a wildlife urban interface building standards. Previously, this requirement was optional for cities. The proposal before you today does 3 main things. It complies with HB 48 and adopts a wildland urban interface, or WUI code. It imposes the WUI code on certain properties in the city, which were highlighted in yellow on the Salt Lake City Wildland Urban Interface map, which was shown in Attachment A of the draft ordinance. And it also establishes that in cases of conflict between the city zoning code and the WUI code will take precedence over the zoning code, with exceptions of the historic designation or the provisions of the riparian corridor overlay. And that would require public utilities and fire officials to work together to find a solution that meets the intent of both codes. This proposal was heard before the Planning Commission on the September 24th Planning Commission meeting, and it was forwarded to the City Council with a unanimous recommendation for approval. The purpose of this briefing today is to prepare to consider this ordinance at the November 25th formal meeting. A public hearing is required and is tentatively scheduled for November 18th. Failure to adopt a WUI building code by January 1st, 2026 would result in the state having the ability to refuse to pay reimbursement costs associated with fighting wildfires. And with that, I'll pass it to the planning and fire departments for further clarification.
All right, can you go to the next slide, please? A lot of what we were going to cover has already been covered, but wanted to really quickly touch on why we wanted to adopt a WUI code. Obviously, the biggest reason is to reduce the risk of wildfires, but also to reduce the risk to city resources, et cetera, in having to respond to those fires and to keep those wildfires from becoming building fires. Next slide. So the WUI code regulates a number of things that, one, it's a portion of the building code, so it's different than zoning code, and it's not to be viewed as if it's a zoning regulation. However, there are some instances where zoning regulations and building regulations interface. Those are listed on the slide. It only applies to specific properties, but it basically, the primary things that it does is that it requires certain building materials for exterior and establishes defensible space. That's both landscaping regulations, which may conflict with some of our landscaping regulations in our zoning code, and also building spacing. Next slide. So these are maps broken up into areas, and as was mentioned, the areas highlighted in yellow are the properties that the WUI code would apply to. They do not apply to every property, even properties sometimes that are very, very close to the interface with the wildlands. It's primarily those lands that are adjacent to it and are at certain level of risk. So you can see on the left some of the Capitol Hill area, and then transitioning over to the avenues on the right. Next slide. Similarly, so this is the University of Utah area in the East Bench planning community, and then the southern part of the East Bench planning community along the upper residential areas of the East Bench. Next slide. And then the last areas are two of the river corridors, one for Red Butte Creek and one for Immigration Creek. Next slide. I think that might be it. So with that, I'll turn it over to the fire department to add anything that is more pertinent.
Thanks. I think the director covered the basics pretty well. We're here to kind of field questions. I know there's a lot of questions and a lot of unknowns. I think one of the main points was that this is a product largely of HB 48 as far as the timeline goes. It requires adoption to keep those protections against surprise costs for firefighting by January 1st. I think residents, when we start establishing rules, a couple of quick points. The WUI code as adopted by the state is a 2006 code. From Forestry, Fire and Lands, we anticipate them updating the code to the most current 2024 code this legislative session. And so some of our rulemaking is kind of on hold until we see which code they adopt. We don't want to try to make rules on the 2006 code and then immediately have to turn around and start kind of rewriting things for a 2024 code. The 2024 code has a lot of positive things in it that give parcel owners a lot more latitude. And so we're hopeful, and all signs point that they'll be adopting that code. So at the end of the day, I think parcel owners probably won't be seeing in Salt Lake City, probably won't be seeing actual evaluations of their property until best case scenario late next summer. And there is in HB 48, there's a state level evaluation of properties that is often confused in this process. The state has the ability to come in through their own mapping and identify which parcels they want to do their own, what they call a triage evaluation on. Our map does not either mandate a state evaluation on our property or free a parcel from a state evaluation of a property that's largely independent. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Councilmember Dugan.
Thanks for the presentation, and also thanks for, this past year, you've done a great job of reaching out to all those communities already, because you kind of had a preview of what this has been, and so you've been educating my neighbors, which is very helpful. A couple questions, and when I looked at the map the other day, it didn't dawn on me until just now, and I can't find the East Bench, a clear view, but thinking about the East Bench from the H-Rock to Lakeline, there's that open space, but all the houses down off on Wasatch, are they part of the WUI because it's that open space? Because I know that all the houses to the east and on east of Lakeline are on it, but are the houses along Wasatch that front that open space that goes to that gravel road, the access road, are they part of the study? And I'm sorry, I can't find the map, so I would have asked the question if I.
Can we click back to that, what the director called the island properties? That's what we refer to them internally. I think you're talking about Wasatch Hollow, and then.
No, the
Upper
East Bench.
East Bench.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Upper East Bench. Yeah, we did an evaluation. The first iterations of our maps actually grabbed north of 2,000 properties. We refined that down to about 1,700 properties, and this final map that we've landed on for your consideration includes a total of 917 properties.
Okay.
All of those along the east bench, other than the university properties, which are under the purview of the state fire marshal, directly abut open wildland.
Okay, and I think it looks like it might be true there. Okay, that looks like it's about right. All right. My second question would be on the, for the property owners. I mean, this is going to impact the property owners in a positive way, but they're going to have to be expenses to them. They're grandfathered in for what they have now as far as the building code is.
Structures,
any
yeah.
Structures, but any new improvements, they're going to have to they comply with the code.
Correct.
So the question is on the roof side of the house, because people are going to be replacing roofs. How do we make sure that they understand and the builders understand that these homes have a different code than the guy across the street? Because I'm always fearful that, oh, I got a new roof, but it doesn't really comply with the code.
Correct. Luckily, right now, as it stands in Salt Lake City, roof replacements, over 25% of a roof, is a permitted activity now. You need to come down to building services and you pull a permit for a new roof on your property. Right now, without these restrictions, that's been largely an over-the-counter permit, but we're working with the building official, so those would receive, instead of just being handed across the counter, if you're one of those affected parcels, that'd be flagged, and that would receive a code review to see. The code kind of mandates 3 levels of roof in the WUI code, and so we would look at that roof and the property designation and see if the roof they were sitting in was compliant. So when they came down and got their permit, they would know it's going to get a review. We anticipate that being a fairly quick review. For residential properties, that's pretty easy. In short, for instance, an asphalt roof, the type of thing you see going on most of the time in Salt Lake, qualifies as kind of the basic level of WUI roof. For extremely ingrown properties or properties that really want a lot of vegetation on their property nearby the proximity of their home, they could have to move up to a 2 or a 3 roof, which has some additional building requirements. But any DOPL certified contractor should be able to identify whether it's code compliant or not.
Okay. And on the landscaping side of the house, because this past a couple of years, you've already been looking at all these properties. How do those houses look as far as already complying with the code? Are there a lot of them that are relatively in compliance, or there's going to be a lot of angst on changing what they have in their backyard?
Yeah, we've been doing defensible space, voluntary defensible space assessments, which is based largely on the same standards for going on 2 years now. And so we've gotten a good sample of a lot of those properties. We've been pushing those quite a bit, and those are available to all citizens. What we see on those 917 parcels is kind of the full spectrum of compliant defensible space. We see some that will require, 0 touches, and we see some that are going to require some projects. I think it's important to note that one of the things that comes up is we all value trees in this city, and there's this perception out there that the code requires tree removal off the properties. I think what's helpful for our citizens to understand with those 917 properties is that, for instance, Park City's been in the WUI game, so to speak, for a long time. They're a program we leaned on quite a bit when we were developing ours. If you drive around Park City, I think you'll notice that a lot of those appear to be pretty heavily forested properties. The vast majority of parcels in Park City are WUI compliant. So I think that gives you an idea of the emphasis that it's not on mature trees on parcels.
And Mr. Chair, one more question about now, as far as Rocky Mountain Power is concerned and the power lines that they have going across the East Bench area and also going across the streets in that area, they are also have to comply within this code, or are they a different section of this code for the power lines?
Rocky Mountain Power easements running through public property are not required to comply with this. Their practices keep them in compliance, but your proximity to a power line as a parcel owner does not does not increase what changes you would need to make on your property.
Okay.
So while we all know that power lines have been targeted as being responsible for fires across the west, and which is true, it may present an additional hazard, but it does not present an additional responsibility to a parcel owner.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that up. As you know, Chief Allred, that's a big concern for residents in my part of the district as well, power lines, and so are you aware of any, I know this bill doesn't really deal with that directly. It's more about residents and their, maintaining their yards. But I am concerned about making sure that, we're holding ourselves to a standard too, that we're making sure that these public lands that power lines go across are being well maintained to contribute to fire prevention. So are there any like state or federal funds that you're aware of that might be available to like make power lines more safe, or to contribute to burying power lines or anything like that?
It's very difficult to mandate public utilities on their easement.
Yeah.
I think we engage through our emergency management office in conversations with Rocky Mountain Power on a regular basis and best practices. That goes for mitigation projects on all of the public lands that abut these parcels. And that's handled through, once again, through our emergency management office has been working very diligently. The mayor has mandated an evaluation of public property, city-owned property across the valley. This fire department's role in that is to really set those standards and equalize those standards across property managers, whether that be public utilities, public lands, to give them a list of best practices to start moving forward in the following seasons. We're already seeing some mitigations in City Creek, in Allen Park, in Miller Park, I believe we evaluated this year. So we've started that process already. And so when, it's fair for a parcel owner to say that my property has been identified as needing to be in our defensible space area because of its proximity to public property. What kind of mitigations are going on that public property? And I think that's a fair question. And we've been able to answer that to this point. And we continue to keep moving through there.
Do you know if there are state or federal funds available to help, like where the lines are running across city property? And, my understanding is that that Rocky would allow, even though we as a city don't really bury power lines, Rocky Mountain Power would allow the city to do it if the city wanted to pay for it. Is there a lot of funding available for things like that, or any funding available for things like that outside of the city budget?
Not that I'm aware of. I'll put this over to
Yeah,
Chief
not that I'm
Fox.
aware of either, council member. We can talk with EM and see if we can talk with Rocky Mountain if there's any grants out there, but
Yeah,
We're
I'm
aware
just
of.
wondering if there are any examples too of other cities where they have buried power lines to mitigate fire risk, if that's something that they've looked at. And I'm sure, it's going to be very dependent on the situation, but I would like to know if there are some out there and if you know of them.
I mean, just off the top of my head, I know Sandy and Draper have land use ordinances requiring buried power lines in a lot of their areas. The difference is those are areas with a lot of green space development available. As you know, Salt Lake City, especially in the areas identified on our map, there's really no green space development that options that we've been able to find. So there's no power infrastructure moving into those areas. So it's a little apples to oranges when we look at examples, especially nearby where they're doing buried power lines on a regular basis.
but we can reach out to some of the emergency managers in those other cities that are WUI compliant and see what we can find out for you.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then my last question is there something in between doing what we've been doing or what we're doing now and burying power lines? Like, are there other things that are kind of in between those two options?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think what we really see in the emphasis of the WUI code is really, there's sort of a prevention side, and that's what we talk about, like burying power lines, education stuff. For a lot of these fires that we've seen, just like we saw in California, are ultimately human caused. There are power line caused fires, so there's a multitude of causes. The purpose of the WUI code it touches on prevention with some signage requirements and that type of thing. But what it's really built for is design is to acknowledge that we can't completely prevent these fires, and so it's trying to. I think we've done a good job on the other end on the response basis. We've built a very good and very capable fire department. It's that WUI is kind of focused on that middle area of providing resiliency in the case of fires, acknowledging that they can happen, knowing that we have a good department, and giving us those defensible positions. So it focuses a lot on mitigation, preparing your property for when and if that fire actually does approach structures, and giving us the time to get those resources in place so that we're not seeing that home-to-home conflagration that we saw in some of the other tragedies, and kind of keeping it at that defensible position, which is the way we look at that map, is those defensible positions, keeping it from moving into the city.
Okay. 'Cause, yeah, I would be really interested in like knowing the full range of options, that, if they're for some reason or another, like burying, aside from being cost prohibitive, if that's just not an option, like what other things we can look at.
Yeah, a couple of those things that we continue to look at as part of that property value evaluation is we're not ignoring, when we look at those properties, we're not ignoring that there's power lines there. And so when there are power lines, we're identifying those. Correct. And there's other mitigations we can take on the ground as far as what kind of mitigations, vegetative mitigations, proximity of structures, proximity of combustible structures to kind of lessen the impact if there were a fire there. And we certainly take at those sources, just like we acknowledge that starts happen, like in City Creek, a lot of our starts happen just conveniently near the pedestrian walkways and roads.
Yeah.
And so we definitely acknowledge that and say the best practices is to have different mitigations where we kind of anticipate those starts, whether it be under power lines or near public ways. And so, yeah, that's all factored in. And we happy to bring the council sort of a more well-rounded look at our mitigation recommendations as we move forward, if you'd like that.
That would be great. And I still would like to know too about the undergrounding, just for the comparison. And I'm sorry I said that was my last question, but I have another one. I've heard from a couple residents that are just worried about the potential like cost burden and time about to come into compliance, and whether they'll on a scale. What one resident has said, like, we just put a bunch of work into redoing our backyard, how much is this code going to require me to just undo everything I just did or make those changes? And if I've just made this big investment in that and used, the money that I have to do that, how do I turn around and undo it if that's what I have to do? Could you speak to that?
I can a little bit. I mean, we've looked at a lot of examples, both locally, as I said, Park City, and regionally, because we're a little behind the curve on defensible space. When we look at other communities in the West, like Colorado Springs, Boise, Spokane, Reno, we've looked at all those examples. Usually residents are, for most landscaped properties, the focus is on those latter fuels, those lower fuels. Usually currently cared for properties don't take a ton of mitigation. Remember, you're only responsible for mitigation out to, where your parcel ends. There's not a lot of big parcels there, so it doesn't tend to be a lot of big projects. So we're able to come in and look and say, to be in compliance, we plan on giving them very specific objectives. There's a lot of latitude, especially in that 2024 code. Like I said, that's what we're hoping for it. Timeline-wise, best practices, for instance, I'll bring up Park City again, anywhere depending on the size of the project and the hazard it presents, they may have anywhere from 30 days up to 2 seasons to complete a project. And
Okay.
does that make sense? And it's much like we do fire code enforcements for businesses and any fire code compliance. The objective is to be moving towards compliance, not achieve compliance within any specific date. And that's sort of the way we run fire code enforcements all over. So as long as you're kind of showing progress, that's really the objective.
Chief, if I could add in also, so right now, what we're recommending to people is to follow NFPA Firewise 1144. It's a national standard. Basically, it breaks it down into 0 to 5 feet from your structure, right? So we want to take extremely flammable landscaping away from your structure out 5 feet, okay? So that's the first step. The second is 5 to 30 feet, and we want to look at trees in that area. So we just want to trim up trees. We just don't want them down low. We don't want them hanging over your house. We don't want them hanging over your porch, things that are going to mitigate that fire right into your structure. So really, I think people are worried about having to redo their landscape, but I think they would be pleasantly surprised to realize what actual mitigation would work. Okay? Clearing out dead leaves, clearing things out of your gutters, putting in spark arresting screens on your eaves. These are the kind of things that are going to help us and give us time.
Okay. And so if I understand what you were saying correctly, so even though the city has to adopt this ordinance within a certain amount of time, that doesn't necessarily mean, or there's still like flexibility in bringing individual properties and residents into
Absolutely.
compliance.
Yeah. The code, the language of the code gives a lot of direction onto what is compliant, but it also gives a lot of latitude to the discretion of the fire code official and the fire department as to setting timelines and rules and stuff like that. So, like I said, and given that, the objective of this fire department and the fire official's office is that making progress towards that resiliency, not achieving that citywide resiliency within any artificial date.
We'll still be able to, like they can now, ask the fire department to come to their house, give them suggestions.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we'll continue
They
to
can
do
go
that
right to
service
our webpage and request that, and we will go out and we'll go through that checklist with them.
Great.
And they can do a home assessment on their own as well. The information's right there.
Great. Thank you. That was my last question.
Okay.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much.
All right.
I
Thank you for your
appreciate
time.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 4 is budget amendment number 2 for fiscal year 2025-26 follow-up. So we still have Michael at the table for this, Michael Sanders. Do we have, oh good, yeah, Mary Beth is here and Greg's here, excellent. Okay. Like our second time going through this list? Really? Feels like more. Yeah, all right. Luckily, these should be. Right, but I really felt like this was the third briefing on 2, but okay. If you want to take us through, hopefully these are the less controversial, not controversial, less, more straightforward requests, so.
All right. Awesome. I just want to give a quick recap of what happened on the 7th. So we just gave an overview on items A1 through A11, and during the briefing, the council took a straw poll on item A2, the National League of Cities Summit costs, and note that included indicating support for an additional $30,000 to be added to that item. Item A6, modification for an appointed position to the police department, and item A11, airport assistant for federal partners due to the government shutdown, and results from all those straw polls indicated favorable support. Now, on to the show.
All right, thank you, Michael. Moving on to D1, this is a construction mitigation fund carryover. At the end of FY25, Economic Development had $168,000 remaining in construction mitigation grant funding. This would carry over that $168,000. And the council will remember that in FY26, you approved $350,000 for the program. This is going to be in addition to that number. The $168,000 will support about 56 additional $3,000 grants. Happy to take any questions, and Economic Development is here too if there are any questions.
Okay, no questions?
I will go ahead and jump in on the next item then.
Well,
Hello. So we have item D2, which is a request from IMS, from the IMS fund for $159,414. In the recent FY26 budget, several departments received funding as recommended by the Citizens Compensation Advisory Committee report to bring some of their positions up to market rate. This amount would bring some of the positions in IMS up to market rate. And if there's no questions on that, I'll go on to D3, which is a carry forward of $2,241,088. I think I might be looking at the wrong number in the staff report, but 881, there it is. And that is money that was previously allocated in the FY25 budget for equipment and software expenses and contracts that were funded, but weren't fully paid in FY25. So this is a request to carry it forward so that it doesn't fall to fund balance before it can be used. And if there's no questions on that one, I will move on to my last one for now, which is item D4, and that is $50,000, a transfer from the mayor's office. It was reflected in the mayor's office budget, but it wasn't added to IMS's budget, so this request would correct that.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, questions? Okay. Great.
Great. The next item is D5. It's the golf fund budget carry forward. This budget carry forward is to pay outstanding financial obligations that were encumbered in fiscal year 2025 and will be paid in fiscal year 2026. There are two components to this $957,000 item. The first is mostly greens and surrounding area costs, which is about $437,000. The second component is about $520,000 and includes updates to range fencing, roofing, stairs, and simulators.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
I just want to make one statement. Anything that says carry forward budget, you've approved this budget in fiscal year 2025. Those budgets are encumbrances that the departments are requesting to move into fiscal year 2026. General fund doesn't have to come back to you with a request for carry forwards, but all enterprise and internal service funds do. So you've approved this budget in 2025. We're just asking for your approval so they can continue to spend the encumbered funds on contracts and POs in fiscal year 2026.
Mr. Chair. Mary Beth, thank you for explaining that. Can you explain why general fund does not need to and enterprise funds do? Because in my mind, it would make more sense for it to be the opposite, since general fund can be used so freely for different city needs, and enterprise funds oftentimes are already restricted to specific uses, that it seems like those funds being carried forward would be, should have less of our sort of eyes on them. But and if the answer is you didn't make the rules and you don't know why, that's fine.
I'm going to have to go back. So a determination from 2 attorneys ago made the determination, wrote up an email pertaining to this. I have the email. I know where it's at, but I can't remember why.
Okay, no problem.
But I can go back and look that up.
I didn't realize that there was that distinction between enterprise funds and general funds. So thanks for sharing that.
Okay.
Great. The next item is D6, which is the green bike expansion. So you're actually going to see this same item twice. So you'll hear from me twice, but I'll be more short the next time. So Utah has awarded the city over $600,000 in federal funding to support the expansion of the green bike program in Salt Lake City. This will support about 9 new stations, including new bikes. With D6, we will move those funds from the grant fund into the CIP fund. In E1, it's accepting those grant dollars. So little bit of a flip-flop on what you're reviewing first, but that's what that is. There's also a $44,000 city match.
Okay, I'm back. So D7 is another fun one. This is accounting for interest revenue on proceeds from unspent proceeds from bonds that the city has issued. So that would give $6,355,027 to the CIP budget. And the interest revenue from bonds is allocated to the same projects that the bonds were originally approved for.
Okay. Anything else on there? Okay.
Next is D8, the fleet fund carryover of $13.2 million. And as the council will recall, in budget amendment number 5 from last year, there were vehicles ordered to avoid the tariff taxes, and then the rest, most of that $13 million is to purchase vehicles that were already ordered in 2025, and 7 of those are fire engines that always have a longer lead time than the other vehicles. Any questions?
Okay. This is great teamwork.
Okay, for D9, you have holding accounts for improvements needed for this building and other city buildings. But this is recommending a one-time transfer of those funds to CIP of, well, $414,000 worth to CIP in order to do a couple things for safety enhancements. First, there's some interest in making it so it's a less rammable building. There's a plan involved with that, as well as actual construction and implementation of that. Second, there's been several departments that have requested a wireless door release system, which would be about $35,000.
Okay, moving on to D10. This is a public utilities item. Housekeeping carry forward for funding for items from the FY25 budget. Those items include grant proceeds, capital purchases, and projects that were in process during the prior fiscal year. This item also includes funding associated with the department's BANS Series 2025, which is used for Public Utilities Future Campus, which the council approved during its September 2nd formal meeting. And this funding will be housed in the water fund for now.
D11, this is Volunteers of America contract. The Housing Stability Division has used over $100,000 from fiscal year 2025 funding our future dollars to pay for this contract for the first 3 months of fiscal year 2026. The remainder of the amount needed to keep the budget Item neutral is $301,000. 300, yeah. And it's proposed to come from not yet contracted fiscal year 2026 Funding Our Future funds from the Tenant Housing Assistance budget. The Volunteers of America contract pays First Street outreach and the salary of a safety and community liaison for the Homeless Resource Center. Can request that in the future this function be paid for out of the general fund.
Yes, Councilmember Dugan.
Just on the Poly South House, can you walk me through the difference between this and the tenant housing assistance, because it's coming from that side of the house?
Yes, so originally it has been coming out of Funding Our Future, and I know general fund dollars are the same. I'm actually covering for someone else. If you have more information, Mary Beth, do.
And I know CAN staff is here as well. If you wanted to come up to the table to help answer that, that works great.
Thank you, Council. Tony Milner, Director of the Housing Stability Division. Previously, this was been funded the past couple of years by the state mitigation grant, but then this year the city decided to have all of those funds go towards public safety.
And so this is going to the public safety side of the house, but the tenant housing assistance, is that keeping people in their place, their house? And are we still going to be funding that portion? I mean, we're removing $301,000 from their budget. Is anything, what's backfilling that?
Yeah, so everything that council has already approved will maintain. So this is just applied for unallocated funds for this year, fiscal year 25-26. And Funding Our Future covers tenant assistance programs, and then also home ownership programs. So then the tenant assistance pot will be a little bit less this year to kind of cover this program.
But we still should see most of the services covered, because I mean, we're pushing hard to the state side of the house for rent stabilization and keeping people, tenant stabilization, keeping people in their house. But we're not going to see a decrease in services provided to that group, or are we?
Sorry, just to clarify, services for
the tenant stabilization. Well, the tenant.
So I think the reason they're using this funding is because they haven't been successful in using the tenant funding in previous years. So they still have that funding as well. They're looking at redoing the program. So they took this funding for the VOA until they come back to you to revamp the tenant program in the future.
Okay, so you're saying that we weren't spending the money in the tenant housing side of the house. VOA can use it, and we're going to figure out how we improve the tenant side of the house because they weren't spending the money beforehand. Okay, thank you. That helps. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to D12. This is another carry forward item. This is for the Sustainability Department for outstanding financial obligations, which were obligated during FY25, the majority of which is going to be used for waste and recycling fleet vehicles. Split between the two divisions, about 9.1 million will be dedicated to the waste and recycling division, and about 200,000 for environment and energy division.
Councilmember Pui.
So, so this is just buying new waste and recycling trucks. Is that what this will do, or what? I'm confused of what this is going to do.
Oh, Debbie Lyons is joined online.
So this is the exact same thing. It's carry forward. You know that most vehicles take longer than a year to purchase. So they have encumbered these funds under a contract. They're waiting to purchase the vehicles, but this is carry forward from 25 to 26 so that they can pay for the vehicles once the vehicles come in.
Okay, so the money has been there, it's just like moving it to a different fiscal year, basically, so it can be released.
You are correct.
Thank you.
Okay, D13. This has to do with fiscal year 2025 budget, the adopted budget, underreported park impact fee revenues by about $678,000. And while those funds existed, they were not recognized as a revenue or an expenditure in the council key changes that were approved in June 2024. However, those funds were allocated in the August 2024 CIP approval. This budget amendment increases the revenue by that amount to reflect the correct total. These funds have been allocated to the Fair Park basketball court project, and this amendment formally recognizes both the revenue and the expenditure associated with this.
Okay. Yeah, Lehua?
I was just going to offer that for the next two sections, because there are grants that are otherwise processed, we could skip unless council members have questions.
Yeah. Do council members have any questions on any of the grants listed? I don't either, so.
I guess the only question that I generally have about grants is considering now the political environment that we live in, if the grant that we're getting is in any threat to be potentially removed in the future. The question will be, how do we maintain that service? Are we planning for that? Are we creating, not that it doesn't, we shouldn't take the money that is available, but are we setting an expectation to the community that some of these programs may continue when they may not? And we have a potentially or likeliness of a challenge with future budget. So I don't know if there is an easy answer to lump all of these grants, but I would love to hear some of that if there is any thought into it.
I don't think there's an easy answer, council member. What I would say is that we have been submitting our reimbursement. So all federal grants are reimbursable grants, right? So we expend and then we send the reimbursement. Usually it's on a quarterly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis. We have been submitting those. We haven't had any issue in receiving the funds at this point in time, so that's a positive. But I don't know that we know how it's going to play out for every single grant or if we will receive those funds.
Is there any possibility that we can connect our federal team, or maybe this is already happening, but for them to run through the list of grants that we often get, including these ones, and maybe they can share thoughts about what they may be seeing on the ground over there, about the likeliness that some of these grants may or may not continue in the future or may be cut, and to get that sense earlier for us so we understand what we are doing and how it may shift the funding for, so connecting the team in DC with your team here.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I would be happy to. We have a list of the grants. We have the list of the grants with outstanding amounts, FTEs, everything. So I'd be happy to share that with those individuals up in Washington, D.C. and get their thoughts. Happy to do so.
That would be very useful for me. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I think that's the only one. Okay.
All right, I think that's everything that we have for you. We have a public hearing on this item tonight.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 5, which is a partial street vacation at approximately 1101 West, 400 South. This is a follow-up briefing.
It's been a few weeks since this item was briefed, so we're going to do a quick refresh for you. You'll recall the applicant is requesting a partial street vacation for approximately 5 feet of city-owned property between his property and the sidewalk. And looks like we've got the image coming up now. The vertical section on the left side is 1100 West, which is a dead-end street on this block, and the horizontal line at the bottom is 400 South, which is an arterial street. Sidewalk use would not be affected if either or both of these sidewalk street segments were vacated by the council. The applicant said he plans to demolish the existing home and build a new single-family home, but current city code requires that the front setback is equal to the average of homes on the block face. There is one home down the block that is set significantly farther back than others, which skews the average. If he were to build a new home under the current zoning, he would have to have the front of the home set back about an additional 4 feet from where the current home is. And vacating this 400 South segment would allow the home to be built in line with his neighbor's house. As a reminder, the administration expressed concerns with vacating the 400 South segment. They noted an inconsistent right-of-way, which would be approximately 5 feet narrower than the rest of the corridor. And another concern is the potential extension of the 400 South viaduct trail. If it were extended in the future, it could be impacted by this. This is on tonight's agenda for a vote. 2 ordinances have been prepared for the council to consider. One would vacate both the 400 South and 1100 West street segments. The other one would vacate just the 1100 West segment. So options listed on the motion sheet are to adopt the ordinance vacating both, adopt the ordinance vacating just the 1100 West, or you can reject both ordinances. With that, I'll open it up to any questions that you may have.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Mono.
It's not a question, but I'll just share some thoughts on this. I think the front yard averaging item in our R1 zoning ordinances is a problem for this exact reason. In addition to it not necessarily making sense on every block face, it also is really hard to measure and really hard to confirm. So that's one of the reasons why I think we as a council agreed to ask the administration to look at the R1 zoning just holistically for some of those issues like that. This is not the only thing in the R1 zoning that I think is really problematic. And yeah, I've said this publicly before. It's one of the things that I was really hoping that I would be able to see completed while I'm on the council. And I know that at this point that's not going to happen, but I hope that we as a city and that the council and the administration can continue to push forward on those R1 zoning changes. I think that there's a million different things that could be the result of that, but this is for sure one of the, in my mind, absolute necessities in terms of changing that. I've mentioned before that I'm supportive of the 11th East or 11th West vacation because in this case it doesn't seem like it's going to be at all an issue. I think that the 4th South one is much more difficult, and I agree with a lot of the determinations of the administration that having the public right-of-way, the street width basically, jog is while I agree with the goal that the applicant stated is as the reason for asking for that, I think it's the wrong tool to accomplish that because selling land, selling part of the public street for that purpose, I think is too big of a move for me to be supportive of that. There's planned developments. There would be an outright zone change that could happen. I think that if this is a huge issue to the council, we could there's like 12 other tools that we could probably employ. A temporary land use regulation. I don't know exactly if all of those would be legal or appropriate in this case, but there's like multiple other things that I would be supportive of looking at before a street vacation on that sort of continuous street that goes through that. And I'll also just say, I totally understand where the applicant's coming from with they're wanting to demolish this old house that is I've never been to the house, but my understanding from the applicant and from the neighbors is that it's kind of an eyesore and that it's been a problem, and they're wanting to rebuild. And why shouldn't they be able to rebuild in the same footprint that exists right now? That makes sense, and I think that's like a logical feeling. But in any case, with any building in any zone, if it's what we call non-conforming, meaning that the existing building doesn't meet the current zoning, if you demolish that, we never say you are allowed to rebuild back in the exact same footprint. That's not guaranteed in any zone. So I think in this case, given this uniqueness of the situation and that the neighbors seem to be supportive of that, I'm open to looking for ways to do that. But for me, the vacation to the Forest South is not the right tool. I don't know if that makes sense to council members or what, but I get where they're coming from. I get what they're asking for. It's not something that's ever been guaranteed in any zone, but if we as a council really want to accommodate that, I think there's other tools that we could look at to do so.
Okay. I'll just say I agree. I'm in agreement with the 11th West portion, but not the 4th South.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilmember Pui.
I mean, to add context, I appreciate the applicant and the perseverance dealing with this task, and I think it illustrates some of the things that, much like Councilmember Mana said, some of the holes that our current book coding, zoning book has, and there are many, and it struggles to understand the diversity of housing and the direction that our city needs to go. So I'm looking forward to solving these issues holistically. I also agree about the vacation of one side, especially because of the concern from the city side, and I understand that the applicant may not want to keep this land for their own benefit, but might want to just give it back, and it is a convoluted, and it sets a precedent that I think it is complicated, because then we can have almost every part of the city cite this as an example to buy public sidewalks or slivers of land that we have for the reason of running a city. But I think that while this may mean for some as a no to some of it, it really means more like there are other tools in the tool shed right here to solve that one side. And there are multiple paths to get to the same place, may not be as as in front of us like it is this, but the worry here is that we're going to create for me at least, a precedent that is dangerous for the city.
Thank you. All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair, there's multiple, as I mentioned, I think there's multiple tools that could accomplish this that the applicant has, or that some of the tools that just the council might have. I don't know how to get a full list of that, if that's something that we want to ask for, or the ones that come to mind again are a planned development or a temporary land use, or I believe that an applicant has the right to submit an application to actually change the text of a zoning ordinance. So it could be that they submit an application to change the text of the front yard averaging, and then we can make that determination. I think there's multiple ways that we can do that. I would love for just some help from someone a little bit smarter than me at saying, here's 3 or 4 things that might make sense to
Yeah, I think
accomplish
you
this?
Covered most of them. I would want to check, Andy might know if they meet the lot area for a planned development. I'm not certain on that. That could be an option. I think applying for a text amendment would definitely go faster than the R1 zoning. So I think that would probably be the most feasible option, but we can brainstorm.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
So just for procedural clarity, if the council wanted to preserve some of those options for the 4th South frontage, should they, in terms of the action or the motions they take tonight, should they leave that part of the request open, or how does that work?
If they are considering vacating that 400 South frontage?
No, if they want to encourage the property owner to pursue some of those other options, is it okay to completely close this one out because the property owner would need to be an applicant for a new request? Or should we leave any part of this current petition open?
Yeah, no, I would recommend that you could just make a decision on this petition, and then whatever path the applicant goes forward with, they could work with planning staff, which would be a separate petition.
Okay, perfect. So the motion sheet in your packets, and that will be at your place, have all of these options available for you, for the council to decide tonight. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
This brings us to agenda item number 6, which is a board appointment to the City and County Building Conservation and Use Committee. Nicholas Peterson. Oh, Pedersen too, sorry. Hi, Nicholas.
Hi, how are you? It is Peterson, but thank you.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you for being here. This is your time to tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving in this position.
Sure. I'm a local artist and educator, and I actually met with you a few months ago. I'm a new member of the Salt Lake Arts Council, and so the Arts Council asked if I would represent their interests on this committee. So that's kind of the main reason that I'm applying for this position. But I'm also an artist. I have an interest in history, and I live in a historic home that was built in 1886. So I do have a lot of care and interest in preservation and conservation. So it does seem like an exciting role, and I'd love to, keep going with these board appointments and learn more about like working with nonprofits and conservation. So that's kind of my main motivation.
All right. Thank you. Well, we're glad to have you back in front of us again. I recall you faced some very tough questions in your previous confirmation, so we'll go ahead and forego those.
Okay.
And then we'll just put your name on the agenda, our consent agenda, at the formal meeting, and you do not need to be present for that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to item number 7, which is another board appointment to the Art Design Board for Amanda Stewart. Hi, Amanda. Come and have a seat. Please make sure that you turn the microphone on and speak into it. And tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in serving in this position.
Hi, my name is Amanda Stewart. I'm a Salt Lake City resident and mother of 3. I have 3 kids that go to Salt Lake City Public Schools, and I live in the city with my husband, who's back there. I own a local business at 9th and 9th called Mochi Kids, and I've been in business for 10 years. And through my business, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of local artists and also nonprofits to collaborate to create designs for our business, and also art in our windows. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we change our windows every quarter, and we hire like local artists to do that. So when I heard about the opportunity to serve on the Art Design Board, I thought it was a good kind of like culmination of what I strive to do with my business, which is create meaningful experiences and connections within the community. And I think art does that for people. It creates a tangible experience for people that I think is so important right now in the digital world. So yeah, that's why I'm interested in the position.
All right. Any questions for Amanda?
No. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, your store is adorable. I wish my kids were a little younger so that the products made more sense, but I appreciate you being willing to serve, and thanks for being a great business owner in District 5.
Thank you.
I appreciate the ages that your store caters to. I have a 16-month-old, and yeah, we love that store. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I clarify something?
Of course.
I'm a little confused about the previous applicant, the board appointment, so it's not about you. So thank you for being here. The previous person in the agenda that I'm seeing says that is to appoint it to the City County Building Conservation and Use Committee, not the Art Design Board, and it was referred in the conversation here as the Art Design Board. Yes.
I think he already serves on the Arts Council Board, and they typically have somebody who serves on both. And so that was the reference earlier.
Okay, because we're both confused here. Okay,
Yes.
we might be,
Yeah.
this is the table that is making
Yeah, I
us,
think we're just
share
confused.
brain.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
So we'll place your name on the consent agenda for adoption at the formal meeting. You need not be present to win, and there won't be another opportunity to speak. So, yeah, if you'd like to just, of course, you're welcome to join if you're interested. We'd like to have you there. But, yeah, there won't be another opportunity to speak, so we understand if you don't make it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for your willingness to serve Salt Lake City. All right. Now there's a clarification on this upcoming board appointment. The applicant did list their business address, which is in District 4, but their residence is in District 6. And so this is for Historic Landmarks Commission, Taimur Semnani. So come on down. So just, yeah, note that correction on the agenda. Taimur, tell us a little about yourself and why you're interested in this position.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. My name is Taimur Semnani. I've been a Salt Lake City resident, or I should say Salt Lake Valley resident, for 40 years. Been living in Wasatch Hollow now for 7 years, and we live in a historic home, and I've been a part of this city's history for my entire life, and it means a lot to me. I've seen the city evolve in some very amazing ways, and we also, my family and I personally manage the operation and repositioning of what I think many view as one of the city's most historically significant contributing assets in Trolley Square. We're grateful for the work that the city's doing on both the council and the mayor and the city staff are doing on reconciling tensions in the RMF zones and trying to make sure that housing is affordable, but still maintaining the historic integrity of our contributing assets. I have a lot of admiration for the city staff and their insistence to make sure that the reconnaissance level survey is done correctly, and I think that I recognize how hard that work is and how much effort they're putting in to make sure that we make sure we see the entire picture of our historic assets. And so with that, if there are any questions, I'm available.
Councilmember Dugan.
Thank you, Taimur, for wanting to serve on the Historic Landmark Commission and your services to the city. Your heart's in the right place, and you do your homework. So I think I really appreciate your work on the commission. So thank you very much for stepping forward.
Thank you for your kind words.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for being here. Often enough, we see people that run for office and go along away from the city. And I know that there is an emotional, vulnerable spot about running for office. And it takes courage and it takes a commitment to our city to be here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for wanting to serve. And it is in these places, beyond all the work that you do in your private side, it is in these places, in these like volunteer spaces, that a lot of good work can be done by people like you and many others. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. To that point, if I can just say, Councilmember Dugan was a gracious winner, and I think he made me feel as though he's a gracious winner and a role model for anyone who runs for office. So thank you for that.
Mr. Chair, may I insert my comments, please?
Yes, go ahead. Councilmember Lopez Chavez.
Thank you. And my absence is due to my cold and fever, so making sure we don't spread disease in the council chambers. But I just wanted to say thank you to Tamor. I have a deep respect for him, his family's philanthropy, and his ability to preserve different historic districts. I just wanted to highlight a very important staple and anchor in our city, which is Trolley Square. I've seen Tamor completely revitalize this boutique mall and really push and amplify different economies of scale, all the way from music to coffee shops to high cuisine, and ultimately really compete with larger scale commercial spaces that would otherwise be in downtown. So I think this is the right type of vibrancy and the right type of property management that we should consider when looking at our isolated historic places. So I'm really excited for you, Tamor. I think this is going to be a really good step in your career. And I think the type of information and collaboration that you bring for the city is going to be essential to District 4. So thank you for stepping up.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Well, if I can just one up all of you, I knew Tamor since college, so I've known how great you were for way longer than everybody else, and it is a pleasure to see your willingness to step up and help serve the city in this way. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember. For the record, I did vote for Councilmember Wharton as student body president at Westminster.
Thank you. So this is your fault.
I credit myself
Closing
with
that.
his start in politics.
All right. You heard the speech about tonight, that you need not be present to win. We'll put your name on the agenda, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to our last items, standing items. Do we have any report from the vice chair?
No, thank you.
Okay, no reports from me. Staff?
No announcements.
No announcements. Okay. Then we are going to be adjourned. We will reconvene for the formal meeting at 7 o'clock in the council chambers. Thank you. Food is